Thank you for joining me today on Bridging. I am your talk show host, Dr. Mel, and today the question is, how is the pandemic affecting your mental health?
Bridging generation gaps, racial gaps, socioeconomic gaps. Bridging, a national television talk show designed to bridge gaps. Let's start a conversation about critical issues confronting today's society. And now, here's your host with another episode of Bridging.
We have Melinda, Sandra, Melinda, too, and Laura Beth. First, I want to ask this question because you didn't have to agree to do this. So why was doing this important to you? Why was talking about mental health so important to you? Let's start with Laura Beth. Why was this important for you to do?
Because I suffer from mental illness, and I have at least 3 children that suffer from mental illness. I'm not sure about the baby yet. We suffer from depression, ADHD, OCD.
Okay. And how long have you suffered from mental illness?
I guess the first time I remember suffering would have been when I was 15, right after I lost my grandfather. I know that a lot of people say they're really close to a grandfather, but I was his shadow, and people called me his shadow. Everywhere he went, I had to go. In fact, I got in trouble many times for going with him when I was not supposed to.
So when he passed, that brought on some depression. How old were you?
I was 15.
15?
I was 15. I was actually at home babysitting my 1-year-old sister. We have 2 older sisters, but I was 14 when she was born. My parents were completely shocked, but that's a whole nother story. She was taking a nap, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. So I was supposed to take my life. And she walked in the kitchen and said my name. Well, what she called me was Sissy. And I looked, and I put the knife in the sink, and I went and held her and just cried and cried and cried. And then I tried to talk to my mom about it, but she just brushed it off. She wouldn't talk about it.
So at that time, you didn't know you were depressed?
No, I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
I was in a dark place, and I was like, what is going on? Why is this happening?
So Melinda, I see you shaking your head. Does what she's saying sound familiar?
It does sound familiar.
Okay.
Because statistically, what we have in this nation is 1 in 5 people have a diagnosable mental health concern. That's your neighbor, that's your coworker, that's your best friend. You put 5 people together, any random 5 people, one of them have a diagnosable mental health concern or condition. And so the fact that, given Laura Beth's time frame of when she may have grown up, it would have been very common in households. We don't talk about mental health, 1, because of the stigma connected with it, but also 2, families not knowing about it, and you can't teach what you don't know. And so her mother at that time did the best that she knew to do with the information that she had. But now in this generation, we talk about it. We know what it is. We know how to recognize it and spot it. And so I would dare say that now parents are a little bit more open to talking about it when their child comes to them in that situation, because now I have a name for it. Back then, we didn't have a name for it. We knew it existed, but it existed in someone else's home or for other people, not for us.
Wow. And I definitely want to talk about that, existing in someone else's home and not our own, as it relates to me, but I'm going to wait for a second. Sandra, you too were nodding your head as Melinda was talking. So what is your story, and how does this fit in?
Well, I have mental illness, post-traumatic stress disorder that started around the age of 4.
Wow.
I had a remission over some time, and then it came back up when I was in my early 40s. So it was a lot of years. Because of the pandemic, some of the things have come up again, which I haven't experienced any big problems in about 20 years. I've been working on things, and through the stressfulness of these changes and things we have to do, have triggered some things. So my big goal today is, if I can say one thing that will help someone else, then that's very important.
Great. So that's why you opted to talk today, because we probably asked a ton of people who said, I'm just not comfortable talking about that, which is totally okay, because you have to be in a place where you can open up with it. And then, like Sandra said, sometimes triggers happen when you open up. So you mentioned the pandemic, Sandra. What
Yes.
specifically during this pandemic time has triggered you?
Well, the biggest thing is the control issue about, I have to change what I do, and I'm constricted to not leave the house. And that brought me back to the years of abuse. And in that, I was constricted. I was not allowed to leave my house, and very controlled by others. And when controlled by others, it's very devastating to me. I want to come up fighting. And then the way it manifests is sometimes illusions, hallucinations, voices, and a real minor situation, and a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear.
Okay. So we're going to get back to you. How do you cope with that? Because there's nothing we can do right now. Like, we have to, realize that there's nothing we can do about how this pandemic is rolling out, what the government has put on us as far as restrictions. Like, we have some control of what we can do inside our house and how often we might go out to do some essential things. But overall, a pandemic is the whole world. So there's people all around the world dealing with the same thing we're dealing with, but how do you cope? So Laura Beth, how do you cope with some of the triggers and issues that you're having right now?
I'm struggling really hard right now. I'm used to being able to go and leave and have a break, and now I'm with my kids 24/7, whom I love dearly, but they're mama, and I'm used to having my time. Right. I can't even go to the library and sit down and read a book or check out a book. I go outside and then come outside. Mom, can we play outside? Of course you can play outside. Just play over there. And I know that's bad, but that's what my depression does to me. It makes me want to be alone. And I just kind of shut down, not with just my kids, but with my husband. And he's more understanding because he's older and everything. And my oldest understands. She's 18. She understands because it was just her and I for a long time. And she's always been my support system, even when she was a little girl. And I know that has been hard on her, but she's always helped brighten my day.
I heard you say that it's bad when you feel like you want time to yourself. Melinda, can you please speak to her on that?
That is not bad. That is actually what we call a false narrative that has been ingrained in our society, that through our value beliefs and systems, people are supposed to think a certain way. So we as mothers are not ever supposed to think anything negative about our children, our families, our situations, our surroundings. And it's not that it is negative. What you are speaking to is your innate desire to self-care for yourself, in saying that I need some time in order to rejuvenate myself, in order to be the better mom, the better spouse, the better friend, the better church member. And you can't do that if you don't take proactive steps in order to make sure that your batteries are recharged. It's the old saying that the old folks used to say, you can't get blood for a turnip. An empty pitcher can't give water. It's the exact same thing. If we do not take proactive steps during this time or any time to personally care for ourselves, we will at a point be unable to care for anyone around us.
Absolutely. So I know that our viewers, they're watching this and they're probably saying, well, I don't have mental illness. I don't have any mental health issues. Well, you don't have to have any to start with to even feel like that, to feel like this is too much. These kids are driving me bats. So I really appreciate, Melinda, that you said, we can't help anyone else if we're not mentally healthy in that moment. My
And
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. And well, there is a difference. You hit something else dead on the head. One in every two Americans in their lifetime will experience a mental health crisis or episode. That's statistical fact. And so that is what you just said. I can't take it anymore. I'm too stressed. I'm too burdened. The kids, the whatever, the job, whatever the case may be. That is going to effectively happen to everyone, that they're going to come at a breaking point where something is going to have to give, something is going to happen. Where it turns into a mental health condition is when it becomes persistent, and that's the difference. And a lot of time people would like to sit there and go, I don't have mental illness, I don't have mental health conditions. Yes, you do. If you are a human being that has emotions, feelings, and thoughts, you have mental health. The difference is, where is your mental health on the radar spectrum of wellness to treatment? And there's the difference.
I'm so glad you said that again, because last week my son, he was in his room and he was crying. He was just bawling. Well, I didn't see him and my husband didn't see him. His sister did. So she comes and she gets us and she's like, Mom, there is something wrong with Broderick. He's just crying in his room and he's not telling me why. So they're really close. Normally, if there's something wrong, he'll say, well, I'm mad at this or I'm angry at that. Well, he just totally shut down on her. So she knew that was like not him. So when she came and got us and I went in his room and I said, son, what is bothering you so much right now that you are just bawling? He said, Mom, it's too much. School is too much. They're giving us so much work and there's no help and I feel like I'm just overwhelmed. And I just stood there and let him, spill out everything he needed to spill out. But in that moment, he was not mentally healthy. He was not mentally healthy. All of this was going on. So we have parents now who are, they're breaking down. Their children, they're breaking down. What can we do as a society to help those people who are going through that right now? What is your suggestion?
There's a couple of things. The first thing that they can do, or anyone can do, is to become aware. Just to become aware there's a difference between mental health, which we all have, and mental illness, which some people have. And so just understanding that we all have mental health is the first step. The next thing that someone can do is they can become a little bit more educated on what is mental health. What does good mental health look like? In short, what does a healthy brain look like? Just like what does a healthy heart or healthy lungs look like? And then begin to take proactive steps for themselves to keep their brains healthy. And then if they notice through warning signs or typical behaviors that, like you said, that was untypical for him, if they become more frequent or they notice things, to pay attention and not sweep it under the rug or just say it's going to go away or it's just a phase or it's just something that's passing. It could be, but it could also be the signs of something else that's going on, that's growing, that needs to be paid attention to. So just being aware that everyone has mental health, becoming a little bit more learned in what a healthy brain is versus a non-healthy brain, and then paying attention to signs and things going on with yourself and or your loved ones. And if you see something amiss, you did it perfect. You weren't afraid to go and say what's going on. You don't have to be a mental health advocate or professional to ask your neighbor or your loved one what's wrong. All you have to do is be a human being with compassion and a heart.
Just care. So Laura Beth, you said that the passing of your grandfather is what started the depression. But I heard Melinda say that, you can have that happen and then a person can move on from it. But this continued for you. How did you know it was a continual thing?
The darkness never went away.
Okay.
The wanting to take my life didn't go away for a very long time. And when it did go away, it only went away temporarily,
Mhm.
and then it would come back, and then it'd go away, and then it'd come back. And where I played the happy friend, let's go out and do this, or let's go out and do that, really I wanted to stay home and cover my head up and stay in bed.
Mhm.
But I knew that wasn't healthy. I eventually broke down and went to the doctor,
Okay.
and they prescribed me medication. And the medication made me feel out of sorts. I felt like I was a different person completely. I was not myself. I felt like a zombie. So I got off the medication, and I've learned how to self-medicate. Now, all self-medication isn't bad. Like we have those that are. I like to read. I like to write. I like to crochet. I like to go for drives, go for walks, do stuff that gets my mind off the darkness.
So that is self-medicating, Melinda.
That is, she in her definition, that is a wonderful definition of self-medication. That is a positive self-medication. We look at that typically more as coping skills.
Okay.
That we look at ways that I can take my mind off of the situation, distract, or find another way to cope with this. And whether you take psychotropic medicine, you get treatment from a therapist, the counselor who is licensed, or you do other methods in order to deal with whatever the situations are, finding healthy ways to be able to exercise your body and mind to deal with the situation is how you work with having a mental health condition.
Okay, good. Sandra, so you were 4 years old when some trauma happened to you.
Yes.
Or you're not aware enough to say, this is happening to me, I have PTSD. How did you find out through the trauma? I don't even know the question, but how did you come to the realization that something happened to me that wasn't supposed to happen to me?
Well, I think that when it happened to me, what happened, it went over from age of 4 to about 9 over the years. And I was a very lucky person in that my parents took me to church as a small child. So I had a good foundation about Jesus and about God. And I truly believed that that was my help. And so when the many things happened, they would come back in my mind, and like PTS does, and stay in my mind, and I couldn't get the thoughts out. And there was periods of time that I have no memory of whatsoever. I was so emotionally devastated from everything that had happened to me. And then I had the overriding fear that if I ever told anybody, I was carrying this alone, me and God. That was it. Because if I ever told what happened to me, then they would kill my parents. And so that left me devastated. And early on in my life, I realized if it was going to happen, it had to be up to me and God. Which I look back now, and that was really a blessed thing to understand that. Of course, as I got older, in my 40s, I started questioning all that. You know, why did this happen? Why did God let this happen? But at the small age, I just asked, I kept praying, and I could notice then there was a ritualisticness. I wouldn't miss any church services. When I pray, I'd have to pray 3 different kinds of prayer in a certain combination, in a certain way, in a certain time during the day to make everything. And I look back now and know it was all about safety. But at the same time, I wasn't being kept safe because there was nobody to keep me safe. And so it started really young.
Okay. So, Laura Beth, you mentioned having children. Sandra, do you have children?
Yes, I have 2 adult children and 4 grandchildren.
Okay, so here's my question for Laura Beth first. How does your mental health affect your children?
they see a side of me that I wish I could have. I sometimes take my mental health out on them. I try not to. I'm doing a lot better
Mhm.
now that I'm with them every day, but there was times that it was like, leave me alone, and then they wouldn't leave, and I would raise my voice and tell them, get out of my face, I can't deal with you right now.
Mhm.
And I know that hurt them, and we have sat down and had the conversation. Mama's depressed. Mama sometimes has to be alone, and they're getting to where they understand. My youngest is 8, and then I have an 11-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And the older two definitely understand, especially my son, because he suffered from depression off and on since he was about 5. And he's been diagnosed, and he's went through medication and went through therapy and went through that. And right now he's doing good.
Good.
But I just have to tell him, I love you. I know that I blew up at you and told you I didn't want anything to do with you, but that's not the truth. I just needed a moment, and you were in my face.
I think, Laura Beth, there's a lot of parents who would probably say they're right with you on that. I don't always like my kids. There, I said it right here on national TV. I don't always like my kids. And I tell them that. I say, you know what? I don't like you right now. Like, I love them, of course, but sometimes they do things I don't like, and they should know when I don't like it. They should know that. So how much, Melinda, how much should we tell our children about our mental health so that they do understand?
In order to do that, you have to have a vulnerability. You have to be willing to be vulnerable to the situation. And part of that vulnerability is actually accepting, this is who I am, this is what I have. And so the only person that can make that judgment call is you. Okay. Because it is an individual by basis, by family difference. Because I know people love using the word normal, but in my organization, we say the only thing that's normal is a setting on a washing machine. What is acceptable for one family may not be acceptable for another family, and vice versa. And so as a parent, you have to make that distinction as to, do I make myself vulnerable at this point to share something with my child, 1, and 2, will they understand it? Because if they are in a situation where they may not understand it, or it may not be any big deal to them, they, being a child with an undeveloped brain, can say or do something that would come back to the parent that has a mental health condition and make the situation worse, and could actually wind up hurting that parent, because now they're going, they just hurt my feelings and I was vulnerable. We have to remember we're all human and have self-compassion for ourselves and for other people. And so in that, it's up to that individual when they choose to be vulnerable and share things with family and or friends. It is an individual's choice. There is no timeline or any definition as to when someone should or should not.
All right. Sandra, you have
Yes.
2 adult children now. How much did you share with them, and how did it affect them?
I did not know I had a mental illness. We had mental illness in the family. My sister was ill, and I had joined NAMI to get information about her. And the more I learned from NAMI, the more I started wondering what's really going on, because I had a real strong sense of overcoming whatever happened in my past. I was very firm as a young child, realizing I'm not going to let these things happening to me stop me. So I was real driven, and that helped me a great deal to get through. So I was 42 before I got a diagnosis of any kind. And at that time, my son was in his first year of college. My daughter was 5 years younger, so she was in about the 8th grade. Okay. And I didn't tell her a lot. I just said, I have this, I have to take medicine. What they saw, and I've talked to them recently both about this, what I always saw, and as I look back now, the thing that was really hard on them, I was so overprotective. You couldn't spend the night with people. You couldn't go here. You couldn't go. I always went everywhere. I was always involved with them. I was very careful to allow anybody to be around them because I was afraid a relative or a friend or anybody, I didn't trust them.
Mhm.
And then the other part was I was real hard on my children with limitations, and I wanted them to have a life that I didn't have, freedom from these feelings and these emotions and all this fear. And I tried real hard, but I think there were some things that were handed down in my family trait, like not knowing how to handle or manage anger. And I don't think that was a result of the mental health. I think that was a family dynamic.
Mhm.
And so they have issues with that. But they have also, one child is a lot more open and less overprotective, and the other one, both of them are really. Thank goodness that they. What I would like to have seen is that every generation got a little bit further away from the abuse. They got a little healthier, and I think that's what happened. But the overprotectiveness and lack of trust was a big, big thing.
Okay. Melinda, what are the most common health conditions that you see in your area of work?
With my agency that I'm with, and this is statistically across the board, the most common mental health concerns that we work with families and individuals is anxiety, depression, bipolar, and PTSD. Those are the most common across the board mental health concerns that there are. Now, there are others that factor in, but those are the most common that are experienced by more Americans than others.
Okay. We are going to have to stop right here. This is so good. I have so many more questions. Today's show about mental health has been enlightening and informative, and it has also caused me to reflect on my own experiences with PTSD and depression. I just want to say to everyone who is watching and listening, if you feel that something is not right with you or a loved one, get help. I'm Dr. Mel, your talk show host of Bridging, where we have real conversations with real people and we discuss real solutions. Until next time, stay healthy.
Bridging. Generation gaps, socioeconomic gaps, gender gaps, cultural gaps. Bridging gaps that cause confusion, division, and chaos in today's society.